Hey everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to my channel, Blind to Billionaire. Today is April 23rd, 2018. Last week I uploaded quite a few videos from a Caribbean cruise that I was on, and since I arrived home, I've had quite a few people ask me if the ship felt crowded. So I decided to bring you a video explaining maybe the days and the times during the day that I thought the ship was maybe crowded or less crowded. So if you haven't been watching my other videos, I am actually blind. I lost my vision to retinitis pigmentosa, so I'm actually going to be giving you my perspective as a blind person on from the ship. So the ship I was on was Royal Caribbean's Adventure of the Seas out of San Juan, Puerto Rico. So it was actually a 7-night cruise, and there were 5 stops, 5 islands. So I would say, from my perspective again, so I typically woke up each morning between 5 and 5:30 a.m. And the reason I did that is that's actually my favorite time during the day. And the reason for that is I like to go downstairs to the 5th deck and get coffee and maybe a little bit of breakfast from the Promenade Cafe. And then I like to take that up to the 11th deck, which is actually the pool deck, and sit there and maybe look out the window and look at the ocean, watch the sunrise, and watch the approaching island. So I think that's fun. I really enjoy that time of day, and I have to say that is by far the slowest or less busy time of the day. There's very few people around, other than a few workers and maybe just a few other people, passengers on the ship. But anytime between 5 a.m. and probably 6:30 a.m., the ship is very, very calm, not much going on, just a few workers, a few passengers out and about. There's actually quite a few people, from what I noticed, up on the 12th deck running around the jogging track. So it seems like they're up there pretty early, but they, do their thing, they run, and then they kind of just disappear or blend in. So anyway, between 5 and 6:30 is pretty calm. I would say anytime between 6:30 and after, especially on island days when we'd be stopping at an island, arriving at the islands at 8 a.m., disembarking at 8:30, the ship would get pretty busy around 6:30. And the reason for that is the Windjammer Cafe, or the buffet, which is called the Windjammer on the 11th deck, opens at 7 a.m. And typically I was there at 7 a.m., typically a little bit before that each day, and there were quite a few people standing outside waiting for it to open, and then we'd go inside and eat, and it was fairly calm then. But when I was leaving around maybe 7:30-ish from the buffet, it was pretty busy. A lot of people shuffling into the buffet at that time, so I was glad to be leaving. Now, as far as the port days, when we'd actually arrive at the port, we were allowed off the ship to disembark at 8:30. However, it seems like everybody was trying to get off the ship at that time. So, in my opinion, from what I observed, is the gangway, the elevators, the staircases, everywhere was just full of people. Very chaotic, very busy. Maybe not chaotic, but just a lot of commotion going on, a lot of people standing around waiting for the gangway to open so that we could get off. So that was a little bit of a stressful time for me. However, I did use my cane. I always had my cane with me during these times, and it helped out a lot because people would see that I'm blind, so they would maybe give me a little bit more space. So that was actually always really nice. So those were all of the island days. In the morning, I would say is pretty consistent across the board on all the island days. So then as far as coming back to the ship on island days, most of the days, almost every day except for one, we all on board call was 4:30, and then we sailed at 5. So typically I would make my way back to the ship between 3:30 and 4 roughly, and I would say that time was also very busy. As you make your way down the pier back to the ship and then onto the gangway, and then you check in and go through security, it's pretty busy. It doesn't take very long, but there's a lot of people and a lot of commotion. So as you're going through security, shortly after security, there is a towel drop-off, and then there's elevators right there. So there's a lot of people going through security, turning in their towels, and then trying to catch an elevator, typically back up to their deck, or up to the 5th deck, where they're probably going to get some food from the Promenade Cafe. So again, another busy, chaotic time, but it wasn't all that bad. So There were a couple days that I went from, so I checked in back onto the ship around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then I would go up to the fifth deck to grab some food from the cafe, and again, very busy. And the way that I'm judging the business level is by seating. So I would say every table was full, and the fifth deck had quite a few people on it. So when I would go into the cafe to grab some food, I would say all the tables were full, and typically if one was open, that was fine. It wasn't very common. Otherwise, there'd maybe be a four-person table with two people sitting at it, so we would need to share a table, or maybe even just grab the food and go back to the room, or even just head up to the 11th deck, the pool deck, and find some chairs up there, which again, similar to the fifth deck, the 11th deck was somewhat busy during that same window. I would say 3 o'clock, 3:30 to maybe around 5 o'clock was pretty busy. And I think that was mainly people coming back to the ship from the day on the island, or just the people who didn't actually disembark but just spent the day on the ship and were hanging out at the pool. So a typical day from me was get back to the ship, go to maybe the fifth deck, grab some food, go to the eighth deck, drop my stuff off in my room, and then go up to the 11th deck and find a chair, if possible, by the pool to spend maybe an hour. And then I would actually go back down to my room and get ready for the night, because my dining time was at 6 p.m. in the main dining room. So as far as the busyness level around the pool on port days, again, I would say most chairs were taken, but there were definitely a few chairs here and there that were open. It was very loud for me. Since I don't have vision, I depend on my hearing to tell me my surroundings, give me an idea of what's going on around me. And on the pool deck, there was always live music during that time, so I found it very difficult and a little bit frustrating maybe at times, because I was trying to listen to what was going on around me, and there's this loud, very loud live music. So then, it just sounds a lot more. It sounds very busy, more busy than it actually is. So there's definitely a lot of people around, but there's definitely space for you to find a chair if needed. So then after I would leave the pool around 5 o'clock to go back to my room, my dining time again was at 6 p.m. And then dining time in the main dining room typically lasted from 6 to about 7:30, so about an hour and a half. After dinner, I would leave. I was on the fifth deck, the Sapphire dining room, on the fifth deck. And actually, the fifth deck is also where you're going to find a lot of maybe shops, a lot of the shops, the Promenade Cafe, clothing stores, jewelry stores, the Imperial Lounge. Again, also there's live music on that deck from probably maybe 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. through probably till about 10 p.m. There's live music. So again, it's loud. There's also quite a few bars on that deck. So there's just a lot of congestion. There's a lot of people kind of standing around talking, people getting food, people just standing listening to the live music, people leaving or going to their dining reservations. So again, it was busy, but I always had my cane with me, so it helped me navigate through the people, through the crowds a little easier, and then people also were courteous and kind of stepped out of my way when they saw me coming too. So then as far as after dinner, maybe like the 7:30 to maybe 10 or 11 p.m., there are quite a few entertainment options. So what we found is that there were a lot of people who would clear out and maybe go to these different entertainment options. And again, there's just so many different things to do during the evening. There's movies up on the 11th deck. There's maybe a comedian, maybe an ice show, maybe some kind of performance like a singing or dancing in one of the auditoriums. So there's just a lot going on all the time, and a lot of people funnel to these different activities. So I would say that's kind of a recap of all of the port days. Now, as far as the sea day, our very last day, Friday, was a sea day, the one and only sea day that we had. So I think there were roughly around 3,000 passengers on our ship. And I would say, you can hear that screaming in the background, that's actually a wood duck. So it's not a human. But anyway, the very last day was a sea day. There were about 3,000 people on the ship, and I would say it didn't feel congested because, again, there's so much entertainment and so many different things for you to do on the ship that it never felt congested. There's definitely people around and it feels busy, but there's always chairs available. On the sea day, I actually spent the day in the solarium, and the nice thing about the solarium is it's adults only. So all the chairs were taken eventually, but I would say it took until probably noon until everybody consumed a chair. And then out around the main pool during that day, again, live music, people everywhere, but again, there were still some chairs available here and there. So a lot of other people up on kind of like the 11th and a half deck. It's kind of like a half deck above 11. There's the flow rider. Again, a lot of people kind of congregate around that area to either participate in the flow rider or they just sit around and watch other people, which is pretty entertaining as well. So as far as that goes, overall, with 3,000 people on that ship, I would say it's not that congested. And even as a blind person, I don't do that well in crowded areas, typically because it's difficult for me to get around when there's a lot of people in commotion. So I never felt uncomfortable. So that's kind of my perspective on Adventure of the Seas with Royal Caribbean and my cruise experience. Overall, I loved it. I can't wait to plan my next cruise with Royal Caribbean. So if you liked the video, hit the like button down below. Otherwise, check out my other videos. I uploaded quite a few videos, like I said last week. A few ship tour videos showing you the Adventure of the Seas. I also uploaded quite a few videos from all of the islands that we visited. So showing you maybe the port, the cruise port, the beaches that we visited, and then I also gave a recap each day of all the pricing that we experienced from the island. So check out all those videos, and then be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave any questions or comments down below, and I will personally answer every question and or comment. So thanks again for watching. I will see you tomorrow.